Hey there again. This is the second video of three as part of a short little series, I guess, to do some makeup coverage from Hurricane Matthew. Um, in this video, I want to talk about coding your transcripts, which is essentially what we do when we are analyzing qualitative data. So we talked about, or I talked about field notes in the previous video, and if your field notes and your transcripts are obviously really important in this coding process. When you take field notes, and this is kind of more so again my approach. I talked about jotting down keywords and phrases that appear kind of during the interview, things that you hear the participant say. Um, and then as soon as the interview is over, I do the keywords and phrases instead of trying to write everything down because you can't write everything down effectively and interview effectively at the same time. So I use the keywords and phrases. As soon as the interview is over, as soon as I possibly can get 10 or 15 minutes of time, I will do what I will kind of somewhat, I guess, maybe affectionately call a brain dump, or what others will refer to as a memo, where, and if you look at the templates that are available for you on Blackboard, um, you can write, you can make in maybe one column a note of your observations, what you believe to be true um, per your observations from the interview, where you might kind of, note the context in which the interview occurred. What did you know or learn about the person that was, kind of very specific, very factual? Um, and then, what are that person's perspectives as reported to you? Again, kind of sticking with things that are very factual in nature, things that you can kind of, look back on and say, yes, this happened. Yes, this is what was said. And then once you've made note of those observations as part of your field notes and part of this memo, what are some of your initial interpretations of what you experienced? What are some of the hunches that you have about the participants' feelings or perspectives based on the content or the topic of the interview at hand? So it's a really quick, easy way to kind of capture some of this stuff as soon as the interview is done, and those are field notes. And the next step, once you've completed your transcripts and had the fun experience of doing some of your transcribing, you then pair up your field notes with the transcripts. And just as a brief aside, um, remember you can find a playback or a recording device that will allow you to slow down or slow down the playback of the interview so you can type more effectively. And then in the Stage and Manning text, they make reference to, in the chapter on interviewing, to using voice to text technologies as a way to assist with transcription. Now, Siri, Google, those kinds of things may or may not always be the best. This may not work, but if you want to take 5, 10, 15 minutes and try to explore something to that effect, by all means, feel free to do so. Okay, back to transcripts and transcribing. Easier to do sooner rather than later because it might just be fresher in your mind, and if there are things that you can't quite make out on the recording, you might have a sense of because of recency. And once you've completed the transcript, you're going to review the transcript and match it up with your field notes. And how does it match the field notes in your memo? Are there any new observations or interpretations that you have based on the review of the transcript? And do you need to change your mind about any of these interpretations or observations that you had based on your review of the transcript? So you've had plenty of opportunities at this point to interact with your data. You've had the interview itself. You've had the transcribing process and that experience. So you're thinking about this, doing the transcribing. And then you have the act of reviewing the transcript. So you've had 3 chances to interact with your data, and that sets you up really nicely to begin the coding process. So coding essentially is what we call data analysis and qualitative research. And it's a bit more intuitive than you might think. So um, don't make the process, I guess, overly complex or more complex than it necessarily needs to be. So I've created a little bit of a hierarchy here that might represent how a set of codes over here at the far right-hand side might eventually lead to a theme that you might have. In qualitative research, and when we report findings from qualitative studies, we tend to do so talking about themes. What were the themes that appeared in terms of the research? What were the themes that appeared relative to the research question? And it starts over here with these codes, where we have kind of discrete individual units of text that you might pull out at some point and use as quotations in your presentation, that, as you begin to kind of code things, you can group into then specific categories. So 3 codes here might create this category. These 2 codes might create another category. These 2 categories combined together might lead to this one sort of theme. So let's kind of take a little bit of a silly example to take a look at that. So here on this screen here, I have 2 lists of somewhat, I'm not going to say random objects because they're not random, but two lists of objects. Apple, banana, baseball, calculator, etc. Samsung, school bus, square, tennis racket, tree, umpire, waffle, and you can fill in the rest of the information. But two of these 2 lists, and if I were to say, take 2, 3, 5 minutes and come up with as many codes as you possibly can for these 2 lists of data, you could come up with several different codes, I'm sure, within a pretty short period of time. If we were meeting in class, I'd probably have you do this as a brief activity. You might come up with some codes, such as the ones that I have here. Fruits: apple, banana, orange. There's a pineapple in here, pineapple. Okay, easy enough. Computers: Apple. Calculator is kind of a computer. Computer. Dell. Samsung. Is there anything else over here? Okay, computers. Body parts: leg, hand. Let's see. Okay, so those are body parts. Sports, kind of a general code. Umpire, tennis racket, baseball, diamond. You kind of get the idea. Shapes: diamond, circle, square. And then animals. We've got a porcupine, goose, duck, etc. So pretty self-explanatory. Different ways of kind of categorizing, but not categories because that comes next, but coding this information. We can take these codes here and we can begin to merge them into specific categories. One category might be farming. Apples, bananas, pineapples, oranges, and of course we have farmer, ducks might be on a farm, so farming. Technology, let's see, technology: Apple, calculator, Dell, computer, Samsung, Square. We could use the Square credit card system as part of technology. Corporations: Square again, Samsung, Apple, Dell, Home Depot. So we kind of begin to have these broader categories where we might combine responses or codes into those categories. This is probably not the cleanest or best job of creating some categories, but hopefully it's illustrative of the point. I think probably my best example is combining fruits and animals into farming. And then computer companies, or probably could have just been computers, into that category over there. All right. So another thing to then consider is how do your themes answer the research questions? Now, in some qualitative studies, we don't always have specific kind of, question one, question two, but here we do. And you might decide, as you've developed your themes, as you've kind of aggregated your categories up into a higher level theme, you may have a couple of themes that address the first question that emerge from the data. How do politically engaged community members, or what rather do politically engaged community members consider to be the purposes of higher education? And let's say that maybe you only have one theme over here that aligns with how do politically engaged people perceive the purpose of higher education relative to their community. And the theme here, let's say for question two, politically engaged people, purpose of higher education relative to their community. Let's say that, it's a monolithic group and everyone kind of says, community economic development as a theme that might organize their response. Well, within community economic development, there could be something about research. There could be something, as a category, research and development. There could be a category B that could be job skills and preparation. There could perhaps even be a category C where you might have a bunch of codes that feed into a category of job retraining or attracting businesses to the region. So you can kind of see how your codes, your categories, and your themes begin to accrete or aggregate up. There are 6 steps to the coding process. Read the transcript carefully, looking for underlying meaning. Essentially, when you read the transcript carefully as you look for underlying meaning to form your codes, you are trying to ask yourself as you go along, what is the specific passage about? And that will lead to codes. And most passages will probably be coded. They'll have some sort of code assigned to them. After you've read the transcript carefully, you want to get a sense of what it all means by writing a summary, just a short summary. And that gives you what is known as the sense of the whole. Taken together, what is this transcript? What's the overarching or the overall message of this transcript, or the overall story? So return to the ideas that you jot down here in terms of your codes. You want to cluster those ideas that are similar in nature into different groups and assign each group a label or a unifying idea. And when you do that, you have essentially come up with code. So the code won't be the specific thing, the specific label that you assign to a unit of text, but it might be the next thing, the next level or layer. You might have, several codes within a transcript, several different comments that contribute to the same code. Once you have your codes, you're going to group similar codes together. They may not have the same name exactly, but you're going to kind of draw lines between those that are similar, reduce and consolidate that list into what then become categories or subcategories. And then the 6th step, assemble this data, your categories, as well as some quotations from your transcript by category so that you have those to draw on to illustrate your findings. Review the data within each category and then form clusters again. And what do you conclude from what those clusters of data are telling you, what those categories and clusters of data are telling you? That then gives you your themes, which is a big part of what forms your results. Remember to use the quotations, however. You want to make sure that you have that. And the other word of caution here, we tend to say, I have lots and lots of people saying these sorts of things, therefore that's the most important. It may be that some things that are very important in your project might be an idea or something that's said only once or twice, but it could still be incredibly important and really, a critical piece to name. So allow yourself to give room and to give space to things that people say that may only appear once or twice, that can be really, really powerful. They just aren't necessarily said by everyone. So that's not necessarily, the frequency of something being the is not the most important thing. Thank you.